Welcome to the Sooners 360 Recruiting Podcast, a podcast for OU recruiting fans by Sooners 360. Each week, we catch you up on the latest in OU recruiting news and provide opinions and evaluations on all things OU football recruiting. I'm Chris Mason, lead recruit analyst for Sooners 360. This podcast is now sponsored by Sooners 360 on Patreon. To support this podcast, please go to patreon.com/Sooners360817 and click subscribe. It's only $2 a month. There's also a free trial option. That's where I'm posting all of my regular recruiting content. The link will also be in the show notes. Also, this podcast is now a part of the Believe podcast family. Every team, every topic, everywhere. Also, I'm appearing on the Horns Down podcast with Chris with a K and with Jason Watkins of the Hall of Fame podcast. We're doing a live stream roundtable on Thursdays or Fridays. Please like and subscribe to the Through Sooners 360 YouTube channel to get access and notification to that. If you miss the live streams, you can watch them by going to Sooners 360's YouTube channel. Click on the live section and you can catch the recorded versions of the live stream. This is episode 134, July Decisions Looming. And now to the recruiting news. And as always, we will start with verbal commitment news. And we have a verbal commitment to discuss. Just one. OU took some hits. As we've been discussing, OU's been taking some recruiting hits. So we only have the one to talk about, which is Deacon Schmidt, the offensive tackle from Windsor, Colorado. 6'5", 315, 320. He's a four-star on a couple of networks. A couple other networks have him ranked as a high 3-star. Wouldn't surprise me after all this Rivals on 3 stuff clears up if he's not basically a composite 3 at that point. Now, he's the only offensive tackle that visited OU officially, so it's good that OU grabbed him. I know there's been some chatter that he was the number one offensive tackle on OU's board. I'm sure he is the number one. He's the only committable tackle, on OU's board. So in terms of having taken an official visit, so I'm sure that he probably is ranked that high as a right tackle. But I'm sure 6 months ago, 4 months ago, OU's recruiting board had other tackles on there. So you want to get old hyper technical on it. He is probably the number one tackle on their board. Now he's a right tackle primarily. His film is excellent. He's very physical. He is mauling, mashing kids. He is collapsing the line on running plays. He does a good job pulling, very athletic, and smashing guys on the perimeter. He's pushing guys downfield. He's moving the line. He's creating movement. He's doing all those things Gabe Eichert wants OU's offensive linemen to do and weren't doing last year. He's getting a push. He's moving defenders. He's pancaking guys. It's really very, very good film. The only thing you don't see at a high level, and that's because I think Windsor is more of a running team, is there's not a lot of highlights of him pass blocking. There's a couple. He looks good doing it. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with what's going on there, but you would like to see maybe some more evidence of pass blocking. But if he can bring his pass pro anywhere near his run game as a power right tackle, OU's got themselves a piece that you could easily imagine across from Michael Fasucci or Ryan Foje, depending upon how OU's offensive line things work out. If Fasucci left before Foje and you played Foje at left tackle, you could easily have Schmidt at right tackle. He also has some position flexibility. You could easily move him inside to either guard slot. He's very physical, mashes guys. He would be an excellent guard on the collegiate level as well. This gives OU 2 offensive linemen, Noah Best and Deacon Schmidt. I like both guys. One's an interior guy. One's a right tackle. They obviously lost Will Conroy, who chose UNC, and they missed out on a couple of their last offensive line targets. So I think Bill Biedenbaugh and Mr. Nagy and like Dawson and the other guys and Kevin Wilson, if he's helping out, they've got some work to do this fall. We'll get into that in later podcasts, but OU cannot stand pat at 2 high school offensive linemen in this class. Standing pat there instead of signing 4 or 5 guys every class is how we ended up with the problem we had last year. So you've got to sign 4 guys. I don't know who those would be. Obviously, the name Daniel McMorris from Norman North has been thrown around. He's verbal to Minnesota right now. He would be a left tackle prospect. He's 6'5", 265. Would need development and work, but with OU's depth that they've sort of been able to piece together, you could take a run on someone like McMorris, and you could take a run on some other interior offensive line targets, or you could double back to some guys and see where they are once OU starts playing football and maybe when their offensive line looks better. So definitely multiple strategies OU could follow there. But right now, they need more offensive linemen. They need at least one more, a flex, an interior guy, someone who could play guard or center, like Noah Best. There's some names floating around, but we'll see what goes on when the fall hits, because OU cannot have any more official visitors until football starts this fall. And as we are discovering, no official visits means kids don't sign. So at least right now, that's where we are. So, and even if they do officially visit, you're not always winning those battles either. But you want to target about 30 kids, and you want to hit on about 50% of the uncommitted kids that visit from that perspective. So we'll dive into some of those bigger numbers over the next couple of weeks as the recruiting news ebbs and flows a little bit. All right, decisions coming up or that are scheduled. The first one, I'm recording this early July 3rd, like 12 o'clock Eastern time. So the first decision coming up is Braden Presley. That looks like Texas Tech or OSU. I think OU kind of moved off Presley a little bit, and we'll talk why here in a bit. Then we have Tyler Ruxer on 7-7. This looks like OU is way out in front. We just got a Steve Wiltfong prediction. This would be a big addition with Tyler Ruxer and Ryder Mix. You have a very strong tight end class of 2 guys who know how to play tight end, are 2-way tight ends, have a lot of potential, and with an early enrollment would be 2 guys that probably could help OU in 2026. Then we have linebacker Braxton Lindsay. He's now announcing on 7-7. On the last podcast, I said we were waiting for his date. Now we have it. BYU or OU looks like the battle here. We've got a BYU prediction from their 247 site. We've also got internet follows, which would seem to say Lindsay's leaning to BYU. And then we've got, that's just where things are right now. Excuse me, pardon me there. It's heat allergy season here in Georgia. So that would mean that OU is, if he chooses BYU, which is where the current trend lines are, his family are of the Mormon religion, Mormon faith. So BYU always is a factor when that's a factor. So this is a disappointing loss for OU. I thought they had him locked up on the 6-6 visit, but he still took the BYU visit. That was the last visit he took. So OU kind of got hit with their own strategy there in terms of that. BYU's also making a run at a pretty big recruiting class. They got Ryder Lyons, Brock Harris. So they're signing as many 4-stars as they've signed in years. And let's just call it what it is. It's NIL 7-1. Everyone's getting their contracts in before the date, and BYU's just following that trend. So we'll see what happens there. I would imagine I just gave OU an O-line homework assignment for the fall. They have got to sign a third high school linebacker. I know folks will say they can go to the portal and find linebackers, but Brent's system is not conducive to bringing a guy in and thinking he can pick up that defense in a year. It doesn't work at linebacker. He asks his linebackers to do too much. it's a bad fit to ask a linebacker to try and do that. OU's linebackers need to be homegrown. They need to be in the system for a year or two, soak, and then hit the field where they can make an impact. So from that perspective, I want OU to grab a third high school linebacker. I don't care if it's a project. Find a big athletic kid who projects at linebacker that you can coach up and develop. Don't wait for the portal. I don't think that's a good idea. So that's Braxton Lindsay. Like I said, that story's kind of going not OU's way. I know people will freak out over this, but it's just another example of the 7-1 date enabling, forcing mid programs to spend more money to try and get kids and get them in before the new rules go in place, where there could be a balance to things. And then programs like BYU just can't go head to head with programs like Oklahoma. So on 7/11, we should have a commitment from Jordan Clay, the big wide receiver from San Antonio, top 50, top 100 in the nation. Looks like he's officially said it's OU, Baylor, and Colorado. Looks like an OU Baylor battle, and depending upon who you believe, Baylor's in front. Maybe OU's creeping up on them. We'll have to see. It's probably a 50-50 kind of situation. We'll know more next week, right before he announces. Then we have Zach Turner, the tight end wide receiver from Duncanville. It was Miami over OU. Now it looks like it's SMU over Miami. So two programs throwing cash around at unreal levels are getting this contract done before 7/1. And it appears to be SMU has gotten that done right under the wire. So looks like he's got to SMU. Then on 7/12, we have some better news coming. We have Jacob Eberhardt, the safety DB from the St. Louis area. Top 250, 4-star, excellent film, big frame, typical Brandon Hall safety, athletic, flies over the field, physical, with big size, the kind of guy who can stay on the field every down for whatever SEC offense is being thrown at him. And we've got OU predictions left and right for Jacob. Looks like they have won that recruiting battle over Illinois. And Illinois had kind of a little bit of an edge with a family legacy kind of feel to it. So then we've got two other announcements. The first one is in July, and we have our first August announcement. On 7/26, we have Elijah Golden. All signs point to Notre Dame. We'll keep an eye on this, but I'm not expecting that really to change. Then we've got T-Ron Richardson, the defensive tackle from Virginia. He's announcing on 8/26. And it looks like OU's battling Vatek for his signature. And if they could get Richardson as a second defensive tackle in the class, that would be big based upon some of the other issues we see out there. But again, OU's going to have to figure out some defensive tackle things, another assignment for the fall. Other official visitor updates. So I only think we have 3 names beyond what I just listed in terms of guys who've officially visited OU but have not committed to OU or somewhere else. First is Jake Krull. As we said, he's been predicted to OU. I don't see any change in that. He doesn't have a date yet. I think an early September decision, possibly after the Michigan game, if he comes and attends that, is likely. Then we have wide receiver Davion Gross. He's predicted to OU. Again, no change there. Baylor's kind of fighting as well. No date yet. Best guess, maybe early August. And then we have DeAnthony Lafayette. This looks like an Oklahoma-LSU battle. So he's looking to lead the state of Florida. At least that's the way it's trending right now. We'll see. There could be a change. And LSU just got a high-profile defensive end, a guy that's really, really good, Trent Henderson, I believe is his name. I don't know if that helps OU, pushes LSU's defensive end numbers, makes them a little tight, or allows them to focus somewhere else. But There we have it. He's he's down to OU and LSU, it looks like. That's what he told some folks. Did some interviews, said he's down to 2 schools. So we could see Anthony Lafayette, the defensive end from the Orlando area. I think a July decision is entirely possible. Just waiting on an announcement. So that's the whole gamut of names out there for 2026 that officially visited the June official visits. I guess technically Breck College, the big offensive guard, maybe a tackle from IMG he visited in April, but I have not heard him connected with OU in a while, so I don't think OU's really in that hunt any longer. So the only other piece of 2026 news that's floating out there is OU offered athlete, wide receiver, linebacker, safety, Joe Wyatt from Tennessee. He's 6'4", 190 pounds. He was all set to announce, I think, on 7/7. He's delayed that announcement. He has publicly talked about taking more visits. And he has the OU offer. Lake Dawson made that. And I think there's a chance OU could get him on campus in September for an official visit. At least that's what it seems to be. Parker Thune has an interview with him. And that seemed to be the general movement based upon that interview. Tennessee and Vandy are still fighting there. But it would be interesting to see if OU could bring him in. He's a top 100 player by most services. Be interesting if OU could bring him in. It's a cliche at this point, but he could be a big-time cheetah kind of safety for OU, or he could be a wide receiver. Or even with his frame, you could put 20, 30 pounds on him and make him an elite-looking will linebacker. So there are lots of options there if he decides he wants to officially visit OU and give OU a chance to pitch what's going on. Obviously, the primetime Michigan window gives OU a chance to bring in some kids early. So I think there's a chance you're going to see some offers go out in the August timeframe, and so OU trying to get some kids back on campus for the Michigan, or get some kids on campus for the first time. Maybe try and get some kids back on campus for unofficial visits that are committed elsewhere. Get them on campus for the Michigan game and see if that can perhaps help OU flip some kids. So that is everything 2026. OU's been making new offers for 2027. So we'll talk about a few of them here. The first is Caden Fife from Chattanooga, Tennessee. He's 6'5", 295, or at least that's what he's listing himself as. He's an on-3 top 150 player in the nation. Really aggressive on film, crashing the line. I don't think he's a 3. I think basically you put as much weight on him as his mobility. You want to keep that mobility burst, but I think he'd be a big nose guard for OU. Then OU offered Carlos May from Birmingham, Alabama. He's 6'4", 300 pounds. His film is also very good. He's a big interior tackle, defensive tackle. Todd Bates obviously trying to go back to the SEC territory and steal a big tackle, big defensive tackle for the Sooners. Then OU offered Braden Parks from Illinois. He's 6'3", 300. Easily can be 315. He's a big nose guard, run stuffer. Top 150 on Rivals. I'm not really sure how OU pulls a defensive tackle from Illinois these days, but I guess it's possible. Then they offered Tavares Harrington from, and I screwed up my notes. I don't have where he's from. So he's 6'3", 190 pounds. He's a top 100 player on ESPN. He has lots of big-time offers. No real connections to OU that I know of. So I don't know if this is a reach offer or if there's something I'm missing. Then we have J.R. Sanders, an offensive tackle from Virginia. He's a top 200 player on 247, 6'5", 285 pounds. could be bigger than that. And he's already been interviewed by several OU sites, and he seems pretty high on OU. I think an unofficial visit this fall is highly likely. And I think he's a name to watch and track on the offensive line for the Sooners, which is OU's got a good list of guys already for 2027. So if they only sign 3 or 4 players in 2026, which is where the trend line is, I think you could see a big offensive line class in 2027, which makes perfect sense. It would be the second and third and fourth years for the big O-line classes of 24 and 25. So that would make sense to come with a big class in 2027 as those guys start to either leave early, transfer, or become starters and are the veterans in the crew. So you'd have a class behind them to get a year or two experience before they have to take over. And you've got guys like Cooper Hackett, Caden Penny, Luke Wilson, J.R. Saunders, Brian Swanson, maybe Ishmael Kamara, Peyton Miller, Gus Corsair. So there are names for 2027 on the offensive line. So that's your quick recruiting update. It's only 20 minutes. There's not that much going on as OU looks to close out the July decisions. Hopefully we'll have some more verbal commitments. So we'll have that content to talk about. Not probably going to get a lot in the way of new offers for 2026 until the fall, until OU has a chance to evaluate senior film. So we'll start talking about some of the strategy things going on for the Sooners. Remember, the end of July, we'll have the Sooners Under the Stars, which is the junior day event for 27 and 28. So we'll have names there that we can discuss visiting that'll give us an idea. We'll start seeing some information start to move to 27 in some areas, but I think OU has significant homework for 26, and we'll start talking about that on more podcasts as we follow through. So thanks everyone for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your platform of choice on audio, and don't forget to leave a rating. If you are watching this podcast on YouTube, please subscribe to the Sooners 360 channel. That helps greatly. And also, finally, one more appeal. Please visit patreon.com/Sooners360817, or just go to patreon.com, type in Sooners 360 to subscribe for more recruiting content. And the Sooners 360 on Patreon keeps this podcast free on YouTube and on the audio platforms. So please consider subscribing and giving us a try over there. It's keeping this podcast going. Thanks so much.